Hi, welcome to One Voice Evolving podcast, where we have guests on to speak to white women who want to expand their own understanding, awareness, and expertise in the field of racial equity and DEI. We want to reclaim the joy, leave the drama, and see what's ahead for us. Today, our guest is Lynn Schussler-Williams, who is a certified Reset It specialist, speaker, and author. Lynn teaches a remarkable process to release what doesn't belong to you and changes perspectives and results. For over 20 years, Lynn has worked with individuals and groups, helping them accelerate results, create richer, more fulfilling lives. She's on a mission to help people learn to reset their programming and conditioning that holds them back or keeps them stuck. At this juncture in time, she and I are both involved with the RAARE Woman Collective, which is headed by Dr. Nikki Lanier, and our racial equity focus is being absorbed by the greater movement of women of all races, nationalities, backgrounds, religions, political structure coming together for a common good and a common goal. So for about the next 84 days, we are going to be giving our listeners tips, tools, and tricks to help you get unstuck from uncomfortable places so you can keep moving forward in harmony with our sisters around us. Now, our intention is that this doesn't stop at 84 days, but that this is the catalyst that brought us together in a way that nothing else could have, so that we can then move for the good of all going forward in a much more effective and much more organized manner. Lynn is the author of the nationally recognized book, 9 Little Words to Change Your Results, Releasing Old Patterns and Moving Forward with 3 short phrases, as seen in Oprah magazine. She's a recognized speaker on topics, and she is a champion of women entrepreneurs, women in leadership, women in business. Please enjoy this time with us. It's conversational, it's personal, it's a little political, and it is a safe space for you to begin to examine what it is you want out of this one and only life for yourselves, for your community, and in my case, for your children and your grandchildren, but especially your granddaughters. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and we will see you on the other side. Welcome to One Voice Evolving, the podcast where we reclaim joy in DEI spaces. It's never more necessary and sometimes more challenging depending on what baggage we're bringing to the table. So our guest today is Lynn Schussler-Williams, who is a Reset It specialist. And I'm going to let Lynn tell you a little bit about her and what Reset It is. And then we'll get into the meat of the quickest fix we can find for you to keep you moving so that you don't lose momentum in the next 90 days.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And, Reset It is a tool that allows us to use the background of quantum physics and neuroscience to create a simple tool that we can use to get rid of the things that don't belong to us. Every adult human being has programming that they've received from other people, parents, teachers, spouses, bosses, all the people, and society, right? Social programs like, what's it mean to be a woman? What's it mean to be smart? What's it mean to be, fill in your blank, right? There are so many social programs out there that influence us, and then conditioning. Those are the things that we learn in life, right? Through experience, not necessarily from other people or society, but we have these experiences over and over, like Pavlov's dogs did, right? That make us think, oh, if this happens, then this happens. And they all become filters through which we see ourselves and the world. And Reset It is the way that we remove those filters and live and make decisions from our own authentic selves. So it's such a powerful, timely tool, I think, especially given our conversations for women these days.
Our listeners are largely white women who are drawn to do work in DEI spaces or in racial equity.
Yes.
And I'm helping them find their tribe or their safe place so that they can do their personal bias work before they start to address the cultural, structural racism issues.
Yeah.
In the middle of that, we had some campaign and election things thrown into the mix that caused women from every background, color, race, creed, everything into the same melting pot for a joint purpose. 84 days from now, we have an election.
Yes.
And while we may not be political, I do see cracks in the armor and fears rising between Black and white women, particularly about not feeling welcome or about being afraid that white women are going to get what they want and then forget about the racial inequities that exist.
Yes.
But I'd like to talk about how does this programming that is so automatic, it's habitual, it runs on autopilot without even knowing what we're doing. And how did you become aware of your programming?
Well, I have been a personal development junkie for 40 plus years. And so I became aware at a pretty young age of things that were getting in my way, ideas that weren't serving me, and things that I was responding to life in ways and having experiences over and over and over in ways that I just didn't seem to be able to get rid of. And I'd even written a personal development book myself, the subtitle of which is Releasing Old Patterns and Moving Forward with 3 short phrases. So this was something I was from young adulthood on very just attentive to, like, how can I? And if you said to me along this journey of 40 plus years, Kim, oh, I've got this way for you to get out of your own way, or I can help you remove your limiting beliefs, I was like, I'm in, show me, come on, let's do it. And I had done so many different practices and processes and learned them, been certified in them, all that stuff. And what I found through, I used to talk about peeling the onion, right? Layer after layer after layer. And it's a useful analogy in that we often feel that way about getting better and better, oh, I got rid of this. There's always another layer. There's always another layer. But eventually I came to know there's no darn onion. Like, let's just get real and be us. To heck with the darn onion. No. And so it's been quite the journey for me. I think your original question was, how did I become aware? And I don't really know how to answer that because it was so long ago. Like, it was just part of my education process. I have a degree in religious studies originally that was 44 years ago. I got that degree, right? So when I tell you I've been on this personal and spiritual development journey for a long time, it really has been a while.
And you've been evolving. And
yeah. I now talk about how one of the myths of personal and spiritual development is that you have to work hard at it or that it takes a long time. And I just don't believe that anymore. Nor am I signing up for that class, as the famous Jim Rohn used to say. I wouldn't sign up for that class if I were you. That's how I feel about it. I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be work that takes forever to do. We have, and reset it is something all adults with an intact brain can do, and just nobody ever taught us how, right? We teach it. One of the things I would tell you first is, unlike lots of processes where some practitioner does something to you, like, I'm just going to say hypnosis, right? Where someone's doing something to you, or energy work where they're doing energy to your body or whatever. I'm not doing it. I am teaching it as a process that you can do yourself. So it is about learning the process. And we do it initially in 2 basic training sessions. So those 2 sessions are 90 minutes each, about a week apart. And at the end of those sessions, I just right before you and I got on to this recording time together, I had just finished a second session with a client, and she was so excited about the ways it already felt her life was different because she had learned this process and it's an experiential learning. So it's learning by doing. So we spend those 90 minutes together about a week apart. So over a week to 10-day, 2-week period. And we go through it and you learn it by doing it. And the comment that I get more than anything else from the people who have done it is, can it possibly be this easy? And I'm like, yes, sign up for that class.
Now
So,
you
yeah.
are very active in Facebook and across the internet in women's support and women's groups
Yes.
and so as women gather and maybe their things start to pop up or it threatens to derail them. I mean, my story is that I live in a white bubble and I for all of my life didn't recognize that racial inequity even was a thing to be worried about until about 2020. And I was shocked at how much I did not know about myself, about my community, and about our culture or the way we've been taught history.
Right.
And so when it's been people who are interested do what's convenient and not too difficult. People
Yes,
are committed, do whatever it takes.
that's right.
And we are in the place of wanting to move people like me from taking the easy out. If it gets too hard, if I get too much pushback, I'm just going to my white bubble because I don't have to. I don't have to do this hard work.
Right. That's what we call privilege.
That is what we call privilege. Tell me more.
Well, I my understanding of my own white privilege has evolved over time, certainly. I cannot say that I like woke up one day fully understanding it. I continually have new awarenesses of how it matters. We live in a city where Breonna Taylor was murdered, and that was a whole nother layer of awareness for me. When that happened, I woke up from part of the bubble I'd been living in. And so I do think we need to understand that our understanding will unfold and evolve over time, and that's just kind of how it works, it appears to me. I'll give you an example of a recent way I became aware of my own privilege. And that was, I have a new son-in-law who is African American. In the process, and I adore him and love him, and I love his mother and I love his grandmother, and we've just had, his grandmother said to me, who I'm kind of between the ages of his grandmother and his mother, and she said to me, you can't get rid of me now, we're family. And we've just loved laughing and being together and growing together. But when they were planning this wedding, I became really aware of the things that I just took for granted that they didn't, and how those were examples of privilege. When I got married 32 years ago, I made choices about my wedding that were unusual. We got married on a hilltop and on a farm, and it never occurred to me for a second that anybody would think we were making those choices because we didn't know better. That's white privilege right there. Because I saw my new family making decisions about what they wanted very carefully choosing to always look like they knew how to do it right. And so they may hear this, and I have not said that to them that this was an awareness for me. I actually did say it to my son-in-law, but not to his mom or his grandmom. But it occurred to me very clearly that it was so much easier for me to make unusual decisions in my life, to live my life in any alternative manner I wanted to, whether it was a wedding or anything else, because nobody's going to question me about those choices because of privilege. And that was just a real awakening for me. And I've spent my whole life making choices that weren't the norm. I've cultivated that as a lifestyle almost. And it never occurred to me that that was an example of privilege.
That individuality, that ability to differentiate yourself without fear of harm.
Yes. Yes. I never questioned standing up for what I thought was right. I never questioned my safety when I did that. And even when I did it with people of color, I very rarely was in a position to question their safety. Right. It just didn't occur to me. And that's privilege too. One time, I'll tell you this story quickly. Years ago, I was going to a training in Eastern Kentucky, which is, I don't know, 3 hours, 4 hours away, something like that. And I was traveling there with an African-American man who was another volunteer in the same organization I was in. And we were going there for the training. And so we rode together and we got out to get gas in a little tiny gas station in Lord knows where, Eastern Kentucky, on the side of this mountain, one of those old-fashioned gas stations that looks like the local general store with a couple of pumps out front. And I was pumping gas, and he went in to get a drink or something, a Coke or whatever, and came out, and his eyes were as big as saucers. And he said, "Get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car." And I did, because I knew him well and trusted him. I got in the car. I was like, "What's going on?" He was like, I was afraid in that store just now, and we need to get out of here, because they didn't like seeing us travel together, the group of men that were in that store. So, when I say very few times was I ever afraid for my colleagues, that was one where I became aware that, wow, I could go anywhere, but you can't, right?
As we talk about the intersectionality of all these women coming together, they all come with different layers of experience and background. And I noticed that I have in the past, and white women in general, want to say, well, yes, but we're women, and we women have all been discriminated against the same way, but we have not. Yes,
That's
we
correct.
have. We can identify with what it's like to be a female and get paid less. But I even challenged something this week on social media on somebody's feed that was not mine. And someone was commenting that, that white women or the women make 88 cents on the dollar to men. And I said, Black women, 66 cents on the dollar.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's just a fiscal reality. And somebody else on the thread pushed back that, and with all the old thinking patterns of, that's because they're not as educated, that's because they're lazy, that's because they, all of these value judgments about their character is that right. As the reason. And then when I put out the Department of Labor statistics, then they came back with saying, well, that's just fake news. And it's good for white women to remember that we have some commonalities as women, but that's where it ends. And so for us to imagine that our experiencing during this 84 days of campaigning and after is going to be the same as the Black women who resemble the woman who's going to be in office.
Right.
Honey, we don't have a clue. And the more that we can wrap our arms around that and still choose intentionally to engage in that
Yeah.
community support is the extent to which I think this country will be successful, and that racial equity will be prepared for 2045 when the demographic shifts.
And there's a really interesting conversation in that. I see it in the RAARE Collective. I see it in lots of places where the conversation has been about racial equity and about bringing women together, and where up until a couple of weeks ago, those conversations were very apolitical, right? And we even had, and that's true. I run a community for women online myself, and we have steered clear of politics completely. And because of the election that is in front of us, it is a political topic. And I saw Nikki Lanier step up immediately and address that in RAARE Women, in the RAARE Collective, RAARE Women Collective. So I feel that we have to understand that, women of all political parties, women, no matter what you think about fiscal responsibility or social programs or whatever the other topics are here, women owe it to ourselves to come together and find the common place where we can be supported and support.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean we have political conversations in places we wouldn't normally. And I just think we have to understand that and do our best to have them in ways that are civil, in ways that are reaching for the understanding and the growth of understanding, rather than reaching for, just repeating whatever we've heard, but hearing other women and making other women feel valued and heard, and especially women of color.
And when the conversations when somebody gets triggered in a conversation because of their old beliefs or something that's happened in the past or whatever it is, then it's almost like the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response comes into play. And how in the moment, do you have any tips for women in that moment when we're feeling unsafe and we're trying to overcome feeling unsafe so we can keep moving forward together?
Yeah.
Any tips or tricks?
My number one tip is breathe. The breath is a remarkable thing physiologically in our body. Neuroscience will tell us all kinds of things about this too, but just the act of pausing with a deep breath, right? We don't call it a deep cleansing breath for nothing. It cleanses out our cortisol levels. It lowers our heart rate. It does all kinds of things for us that allow us to release our hold in that fight or flight kind of mentality, right? That knee-jerk reaction kind of mentality. And so it gives us some space. A deep breath and a pause. We were not taught to pause. There is nothing wrong with a moment of silence. That you do not have to answer instantly. There's just, you don't. And so a breath and a pause, and it gives us a moment to consider. I was on talking about social media feeds. They've been lively lately. I was on someone else's post recently, and she had posted, "I'm not with her," and a picture of Vice President Harris. And there were a lot of responses, mostly from women, and some were agreeing with her, I'm not either, I'm not either. And then a voice came in that said, well, I am with her, but I'm not asking to be a smart aleck. I'm asking because I really want to hear why you're not. Please tell me why you're not. Educate me about why you're not. And to all the women in this conversation's great credit, nobody started, attacking. And there were some answers that felt a little like just repeating something that didn't have a lot of substance, like she's unqualified, just a blanket statement like that. Well, so this person came back and said, well, again, I am not entering to an argument here. Please help me understand, what is it about her that feels that way to you, and help me see your point of view about that. And it was such a great, so that was my comment, was, so find the good is my other tip here. Find the good and seek to understand. So this person who was in the thread before me was seeking to understand, and it kept the whole thing even, right? And it gave her an opportunity to then say what she thought, right? In a not a minefield, right? So, and then, what I stepped in and did was try to say, thank you for this space where people are having a real conversation. Thank you for not biting at each other. Thank you for having a thread here with differing opinions that I actually didn't mind stepping into, because it wasn't just a big argument. So rewarding people who are having good conversations, right? And if people are attacking, you could stand up for yourself and just simply say, breathe, take a breath, take a pause, and just say, I'd appreciate, I feel attacked, and I'd appreciate not feeling attacked here. So if you could back off a step or two, I'd appreciate it, right? It's fine to stand up for ourselves. So often our programming as women is to be polite over being authentically ourselves, right? We think that we have to be polite, but it's okay to stand up for yourself in those moments too.
Or we have the nice girl, do be nice, don't talk about religion or politics. And particularly in business or online business, we have practiced now for 10, 15, 20 years,
Yep.
keeping those spaces apolitical and,
Right.
and a-religious. And now the personal becomes political, and it becomes imperative. And our voices, to swallow them anymore, is more stress than any of us can manage. Because as stressful as it is to risk being seen for having an opinion, it is more stressful in this moment not to. I say people don't change until the pain of where they are is greater than the fear of where they're going.
Right.
This pain over what's about to happen that's going to infect my granddaughters is so great in me that I am properly motivated. I also feel like it's a crash course in the things that Dr. Nikki has been teaching us about how to approach courageous conversations, how to approach these conversations, because there's no time for a misstep. There's no time for us to bite back at each other right now. Save that for 84 days. The problem is, in 84 days, I don't want to lose this sisterhood that is organically forming, that we could not have seen coming a year ago or 6 months ago when DEI was being decimated across the board. That power that we see is energy and motion. And I do not, if we're not going to go back, then let's do what we need to do now to put the foundation in place so we don't go back to our bubbles.
Yeah. And I think, to pull racial equity back into this a little bit, it's so important for us as white women to realize a couple of things. one, we have, as I know Nikki would say, we have access to white men at a rate that nobody else does, right? Other than them. And so our influence is great. You know, our influence of having conversations in our workplaces, in our homes, in our everywhere, it's important. It's important. And we need to remember that by, I believe it's 2045, the majority of people in our country will be people of color.
The working demographic.
And, you know, it is many, many, many white women will be grandmothers of children of color. I hope I will be. My daughter and son-in-law hope to have kids, and I hope that's true for me, right? I hope my grandchildren are instrumental in making a difference in this country. But, you know, it is another form of privilege to think that our children and grandchildren are safe from whatever happens to people of color. And that is just no longer true. And we need to wake up to that fact.
Yes, yes. And if one isn't safe, none of us are safe. And that's been our white bubble of illusion, our independence versus communal, that what happens in the community doesn't really affect me. Wrong again.
Right.
And this has really brought it home to women who I was having trouble reaching with, what does racism cost you? They didn't really feel too affected, you know, here in New England. But now it's a different story because it's all of us. It's not just what happens for all.
Right.
So this has been fascinating, and we're going to wrap pretty quick. I appreciate you so much, Lynn, and I appreciate your
thank you, Kim.
And I know our community is going to love when this one drops because it's going up on the page. This is awesome. So when for our guests, I like to know, you know, do you have 2 or 3 resources that you can offer, or, you know, for people to take away? And then we also have a place on onevoiceevolving.com resources page with our guests and what they suggested. So
right. So I think in terms of a place to go to see a little bit more of the kind of work I do about undoing some of that programming we have and really applying the work in a way that makes it easier for us to see without the old filters in place. I would send people to, I have a little web page, 54. So the number 5, the number 4, yearthought.com. And it's my personal life story. There's a little 5-minute video there, and there's a personal story about a thought that held me captive for 54 years and the becoming aware of it and what I did about it. And so I think that story has been helpful to a lot of people. And there are resources on that page that can take them as far as they want to go for looking into that. But the story itself, it is a story of, it's a story of getting rid of those things that were just programmed into us that don't really belong to us, and we can undo them. Which I think is a big piece for this. I think becoming aware is obviously the first step, but then knowing what to do to get us somewhere else is so important. And I also, I've mentioned that I run a community of women, and it is Uprising Unstoppable Powerful Women, and it is a global community. Everything in it's free. Our listeners can go to FIND uprising.com to find their way there. That's a landing page that has buttons to all our events and our Facebook group and things like that. And they will find a community of women who are fearlessly having good conversations and supporting each other with positivity and love and growth. And all of that. So I encourage people to come join us there and just, see what's happening when they get there.
Beautiful, thank you. So I'm just gonna put a little teaser out there. I hear that you're starting a radio program for
Yes.
women, and I
Yes,
won't
actually
say
too.
yet, but behind the curtain.
Yeah, behind the curtain a little bit. It is we have one coming up specifically for women called Wise Women Collective, and it is an internet radio show. It'll be a podcast and a YouTube channel as well. And two of my colleagues, Brooke Haynes and Holly Hartman, and I will be hosting roundtable discussions with two other women each week about topics that matter to us. And I hope, Kim, you'll come sit at that table with us, certainly, because these are conversations that we want to have there for sure. So that Wise Women Collective is not live yet, but be on the lookout, and I'll make sure Kim has the link to everything when it gets ready. So thank you for mentioning it. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Will be. Thank you so much. We appreciate everything you do in the community and the way that it's magical the way you bring women together. I've been to one or two of your online events, and it's the best networking I've ever experienced, and I've done fair share in my life. So
thank you so much. Well, I hope people will go to finduprising.com. They'll find what you're talking about right there. And I really should mention the Be More Conference for women too. They can go to bemoreconference.com for that, because we do that there too, twice a year at an online global conference for women. It's about connecting and building relationships, and it is magical.
thank you so much, Lynn, and thanks to our listeners. And we will see you back on topic, maybe if topic doesn't shift in 84 days. But in the meantime, we're going to keep giving white women for whom the personal has become political opportunities to learn, grow, and keep moving forward during this critical time in our country. So
thank you for doing it, Kim.
okay, bye.